At exactly 6:42 a.m. Tehran time, nearly 900 missiles and airstrikes rained down on Iran in a single 12-hour window. In one of those first strikes, Iran's supreme leader of 35 years, Ali Khamenei, was killed. His daughter, his grandchild, his son-in-law, all gone in the same moment. The operation had a name. The United States called it Operation Epic Fury. But here's what was happening just 24 hours before that fury was unleashed. On February 27th, one day before the war, Oman's foreign minister stood before the world and made an announcement. Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium. Iran had accepted full international verification of its nuclear sites. Peace, he said, was within reach. Talks were scheduled to resume in just 3 days. The next day, the bombs fell anyway. Diplomats who were present said the negotiations were serious. They were progressing. There was genuine movement. And then, without warning, they were over. The Omani foreign minister, the man who had spent weeks quietly brokering those talks, said publicly that active and serious negotiations had been completely undermined. And here is a detail that has largely been buried. Reports from diplomats inside those negotiations revealed that America's own envoy misrepresented the state of the talks to the public. He told the press Iran was being uncooperative and difficult. The diplomats in the room said the opposite was true. Iran called him deceitful. The White House denied everything. A deal was on the table, and someone walked away from it. Who and why? That question has still not been answered honestly. So why did this war start? That depends entirely on who you ask. And more importantly, it depends on when you ask, because the answer kept changing. The Trump administration gave not one reason for starting this war, but 6. And they kept changing every time a journalist pushed back. First, it was to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Then it was to destroy Iran's missile capabilities. Then it became about regime change. Then suddenly it was about securing Iran's oil resources. Then it was to preempt a supposed imminent Iranian attack on American assets. Then it was simply national security. 6 reasons, none of them consistent, none of them given under oath. The problem is this: the International Atomic Energy Agency, the world's nuclear watchdog, stated clearly and on the record that there was no evidence of an organized Iranian nuclear weapons program when this war began. Not a reduced program, not a paused program, no evidence of one at all. And 1 year before the first bomb fell, America's own Director of National Intelligence testified before the United States Congress with these words: Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. That is not an Iranian claim. That is not Russian propaganda. That is the official assessment of United States intelligence, delivered under oath 12 months before America went to war over exactly that justification. The U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency had also concluded that it would take Iran at least a decade to develop missiles capable of reaching American soil. These facts did not change between that testimony and February 28th. What changed was the decision that had already been made. In the very first strike of Operation Epic Fury, a missile hit a girls' school in the city of Minab. Located next to a naval base, 170 people were killed. That was day 1. Hour 1. Independent conflict monitors documented more than 3,000 distinct attack events across 29 of Iran's 31 provinces. Nearly the entire country was hit. The targets included military installations and nuclear sites, but also hospitals, schools, residential neighborhoods, cultural heritage sites that had stood for centuries. A sports hall in the town of Lamerd was hit, killing 21 people, including 4 children. A Basij-affiliated building in Tehran was struck alongside 3 residential buildings next to it, killing up to 50 people in a single strike. By late March, Iran's own government reported damage to at least 120 historical sites. Tehran, a city of 9 million ordinary people, endured the heaviest bombardment. Plumes of smoke rose above the capital for days. At least 15% of all casualties in this war have been children under the age of 18, and Iran fired back. Over 500 ballistic missiles and nearly 2,000 drones were launched across the entire region. American military bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Jordan were all targeted. The U.S. Embassy in Kuwait was struck and permanently closed. American soldiers were killed. A U.S. refueling aircraft went down in western Iraq, killing all 6 crew members aboard. Iranian missiles also struck civilian areas in Israel. A residential shelter in Beit Shemesh collapsed, killing 9 people who had run there for safety. Civilians were killed in Haifa, in Tel Aviv, in towns that had nothing to do with military decisions made in Tel Aviv's government buildings. Amnesty International investigated multiple strikes from both sides and issued the same conclusion about both: violations of international humanitarian law, war crimes in their assessment from both directions. Both sides struck hospitals, both sides killed children, both sides will face the judgment of history. Iran's most powerful non-military weapon was also its very first first move. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's entire oil supply passes through that narrow strip of water, roughly 21 million barrels every single day. The moment it was blocked, using mines, fast attack boats, and anti-ship missiles, the world felt it immediately. Oil prices surged from $75 a barrel to over $100 within days. Global shipping companies suspended all routes through the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. Airlines rerouted flights around the entire Middle East, adding hours to every journey and enormous costs to every ticket. Dubai International Airport, one of the busiest airports on the planet, was damaged by drone strikes and temporarily shut down. Qatar's massive gas facility at Ras Laffan was struck, destroying 17% of Qatar's entire LNG production capacity. Analysts said the damage would take 3 to 5 years to repair. Gas prices in Asia surged over 140% almost overnight. The International Energy Agency called it, and I want you to hear these words carefully, the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Not this year, not this decade, in all of recorded history. Countries across Southeast Asia began rationing fuel. The Philippines declared a state of emergency. Vietnam and Thailand introduced government fuel subsidies. Myanmar restricted private vehicles to driving on alternate days. Europe, already running on historically low gas reserves after a brutal winter, watched energy prices nearly double in weeks. In Pakistan, a nuclear-armed nation of 250 million people, the Prime Minister personally called Donald Trump and asked him to extend his war deadline. Not because Pakistan was involved in this war, but because the economic shockwave was already tearing through Pakistani households. The bombs fell in Iran, but the world paid the bill. Before this war began, Iran's own people were already rising up. January 2026 saw the largest and most widespread protest in Iran since the Islamic Revolution of 1979. The trigger was economic collapse. Decades of sanctions had broken the currency, destroyed savings, and left millions unable to afford basic necessities. Inflation had exceeded 40% in 2025 alone. The Iranian government responded with overwhelming force. According to Iran's own Ministry of Health, security forces killed at least 30,000 protesters in a matter of weeks. 30,000 people in their own streets by their own government. President Trump had previously threatened military intervention if the crackdown happened. When it did happen, no intervention came. Instead, then the bombs came. And suddenly, the Iranian people were no longer only suffering under their own government's brutality. They were also buried under rubble caused by someone else's military decisions. Even Iran's own exiled opposition, people who had spent their entire adult lives calling for the fall of the Islamic Republic, publicly asked the United States and Israel to spare civilian infrastructure. Iranians will need it, they said, to rebuild their country once this is over. The internet was blacked out across Iran. Communications were cut. Tens of thousands were displaced from their homes. The death toll, almost impossible to verify due to the information blackout, stood at over 2,000 confirmed killed, with over 26,500 wounded, including more than 1,600 children, and the war was still ongoing. These are not combatants. These are not soldiers. These are the people who were already suffering the most before a single bomb fell. To understand this war, you have to understand that it did not begin on February 28, 2026. It has been building for nearly half a century. It started in 1979 when the Islamic Revolution transformed Iran overnight and the United States and Iran severed diplomatic relations completely. Relations that have never been restored to this day. It deepened through decades of proxy conflicts, assassinations, and sanctions. Then in 2015, after years of painstaking diplomacy, the world reached a landmark nuclear agreement called the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program. International sanctions were lifted. Inspectors were allowed in. For a moment, the path towards stability seemed real. Then in 2018, the United States unilaterally walked away from that deal. Without a deal, Iran no longer had reason to limit its nuclear program. Without a deal, Iran no longer had economic incentives to remain cooperative. Sanctions returned. The economy collapsed. And Iran, knowing it had been abandoned by diplomacy, began enriching uranium at levels far beyond what the 2015 agreement had allowed. In 2024, Iran and Israel attacked each other openly and directly for the first time in history. In June 2025, a joint US-Israeli operation launched what became known as the 12-Day War, strikes that destroyed much of Iran's air defense infrastructure and set back its nuclear program by an estimated 2 years. After those strikes, Iran's currency went into complete freefall. New international sanctions were imposed in September 2025. The economy collapsed further. Then came the protests, then came the crackdown, then came the largest US military buildup in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. By early 2026, Iran was at the weakest point in its history as a republic. Its allies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, had been severely degraded by years of Israeli military campaigns. Its economy was in ruins. Its own people were dying in the streets. Its air defenses had been gutted. That is the moment the United States and Israel chose to strike again. Whether that was a calculated strategic decision or a deliberate choice to use force when diplomacy was actually working, history will be the judge. Now, let us talk about what this war has cost, not in ideology, in numbers. The United States has spent an estimated $35 billion in the first 6 weeks alone. The Pentagon has requested a budget of $1.1 trillion. The U.S. military has burned through stockpiles of Tomahawk cruise missiles and Patriot interceptors at a rate that analysts say will take years to replenish, leaving other potential conflict zones like Europe and the Pacific dangerously underprotected. The world economy is now facing what economists are calling the risk of stagflation. Rising inflation combined with slowing growth. For the first time since the 1970s oil crisis, stock markets dropped globally, bond markets were sold off, food prices are rising because fertilizer is made from natural gas, and natural gas now costs twice what it did before February 28th. South Korea, a country with no involvement in this war whatsoever, has been called the hardest hit major economy outside the conflict zone. Its industries depend on Gulf energy, its supply chains are broken, and according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, one of America's most respected defense think tanks, the war has achieved the opposite of nearly every stated objective. Iran's nuclear question remains unresolved. Its missile program was not eliminated. Its proxy forces were not destroyed. And instead of being isolated, Iran's defiance has drawn Russia and China into closer alignment with Tehran. A Financial Times investigation also uncovered something deeply troubling. Just 15 minutes before Trump publicly announced a pause in strikes, causing oil prices to briefly fall, $580 million in bets on falling oil prices had already been placed in the markets. Someone knew and someone profited. Nobody has been charged. No investigation has been launched. This is not a war between good and evil. If it were that simple, this documentary would not need to exist. This is a war between calculations, between interests, between decades of accumulated decisions, broken agreements, proxy conflicts, and missed off-ramps. And at every stage of that history, ordinary people, Iranian, Israeli, American, Gulf, Asian, European, have paid the price that the decision makers never paid themselves. Iran's government killed 30,000 of its own people in the streets. That is a fact, and it is a crime. The United States and Israel launched a war while negotiations were producing real results. That is a fact, and it is a question that has not been answered. Both sides bombed hospitals. Both sides killed children. Both sides have been accused of war crimes by investigators who answer to no government and have no side to defend. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. The world's energy is in crisis. A war that was supposed to last days has no visible end. No ceasefire, no exit strategy, no plan for the morning after, and the people of Iran, who were already dying under their own government, who had been asking the world for help, who had taken to the streets at enormous personal risk, are now being asked to survive both. The question this documentary asks is not who is right. History almost never gives us that clean answer. The question is, at every moment where there was a choice between war and negotiation, between force and diplomacy, between action and patience, who made that choice? What did they know when they made it? And who paid the price? Because it was never them.